My name is Abigail Theobald, and I am a senior at Lakota East High School in Ohio. My project is the product of what I would term the snowball effect. And for me, the starting point happened in the summer before my freshman year when I experienced my own sports injury. At that time, I was a 3-sport athlete who was on her way to play varsity basketball as a freshman when I experienced a shoulder slap tear in my labrum. That first tear required a reconstructive arthroscopic surgery to repair, and I went through months after that feeling great, and then I had pain start to creep back in, and we couldn't figure out what the issue was. It would just seem like it was just chronic pain and chronic issues, and so we decided to go through with an exploratory surgery that found bursitis, and so that experience coupled with the following rehab and return to play process kind of opened my eyes to some of the issues of sports injuries, as well as kind of the issues within athletics as a whole. And so after experiencing long-term issues from my sports injury itself, and when I was trying to return to play in my sophomore year, I realized that having one acute shoulder injury or sports injury doesn't mean that you're going to be fine for the rest of your life after you get it repaired. It actually means that you're more predisposed to experiencing chronic issues and injuring it again later in life. And so that coupled with, again, the lack of support that I was feeling from the coaching staff and the pressure that I was under to return to play quicker than I wanted to, kind of led me down this path of, I want to know about this. I want to know the science behind it because I've always been a curious mind. And so I decided to dive into the research, and I read through articles and journal publications, and I talked with some of the professionals at Beacon Orthopedics, which is where my surgery happened. And I found out, and I found data that the early sport specialization and all of these pressures that athletes are under today has created this culture that is a win at all costs, and that causes there to be significant costs and sacrifices that athletes have, and they sacrifice their health later on down the road as well as here and now. I looked at studies that showed that collegiate athletes were inactive later in life because of all of the deterioration that happened to their bodies. And so after researching that, I decided, okay, well, what is this overtraining issue? What can we do about it? And so I looked into overtraining syndrome as a whole and its effects on the musculature and the ligaments of the body, and how when you have too much activity too frequently, that extra stress and that load can cause muscle deterioration, which can lead to imbalances, which then in and of itself leads to injury. So just the nature of athletics in and of itself predisposes athletes to chronic injuries, but then also puts them more at risk of suffering acute issues because they don't have the support to keep them grounded when a traumatic blow may happen. But beyond just that, there's this immune system aspect too, in that you are more predisposed to being sick. And there's some serious science that goes into when you're stressed mentally, plus you're stressed physically, your body just can't handle that stress. And that's when sickness and illness comes into play because your immune system is just so suppressed. And so after finding all of those findings, I was like, oh my goodness, this is something that is huge, and that this doesn't just affect athletes here and now, but it affects athletes for their entire lives and beyond and after they're done with their athletic careers. And so for me, that is something that we need to be paying more attention to, and we need to look at this project and this and make a change, because this is a real issue. Because athletes, when they're young, they just look at that here and now. They don't see the long-term picture whatsoever. And so if they can play, they're going to play even if they're injured, but they don't realize that what they're doing to their body at the cellular level is something that they can't reverse. And so I decided to write a review article in which I funneled down all of that information that I found into one research article where I talked about the effects of sports injuries and overtraining, but then I also proposed injury prevention strategies. So one of the big ones, and one of the ones that I am such an advocate for, is neuromuscular training programs that you can do the exercises that you would do to rehab an injury before an injury even occurs. And so I kind of term that prehab. And that is something that has been scientifically proven to lessen injury risk by 37 and 47% respectively, based off of chronic or acute issues. And so that statistic is huge. I mean, that's almost 50%. And when you're looking at the acute and the chronic, like, that is huge. And so I think that when we add prehab programs like that on top of adequate rest days and adequate recovery and limiting pressure to athletes to return to play before an injury has happened, to really look at them and say you need to listen to your body, is such a huge thing that needs to happen, and that needs to change within athletic culture as a whole. So that whole writing process of that research article and kind of what spun out of that was that I sent it to our athletic director at the time. And when I wrote this in my sophomore year, and I sent it during my junior year because I was like, I'm sitting on this project and I can't sit on it anymore. However, our athletic director at the time did not believe that this was an issue, and he didn't see the need because I don't think he really took the time to listen to me because I, at the time, was only a junior in high school. And two, I don't think he realized or really thought that like issues like that could happen, especially since we already had a partnership with Beacon Orthopedics and we had athletic trainers within our high school. But the problem is that coaches don't listen to those athletic trainers as much as they should. And so that opposition did put me in a little bit of a position of, okay, well, I'm kind of sitting back, but I decided to take that as redirection. And so I sent my research to doctors at Beacon Orthopedics, and I got the whole backing of them saying that, yes, this is an issue and I support you. What can we do? And so from there, I started talking with our athletic trainers, and I started building this plan of ideas of, well, how can we implement educational and awareness strategies? How can we implement these prehab programs to where coaches would actually listen and accept this? And so that spanned my junior year of just talking and networking and going back and adding more information and editing my research article. Now this year, though, fast forward to senior year, we've hired a new athletic director. And so I had a perfectly edited research article, which I submitted to a journal, and it got accepted for publication. So I'm like, this is real. She needs to listen to this. And I also had all of these ideas going around in my head and written down in my journals of ways in which that we could change these issues, because I've always kind of been a visionary. And so this was kind of the perfect opportunity for me to put that into play. And so I sent it to her in August, and she responded with an overwhelming yes of, this is something that we need to change, and I'm going to support you and help you in any way possible. So this past year, I've been working with her to educate the parents and athletes and coaches of our school. I've made infographics detailing my research and my story, and I've given speeches about all of it. And I've also been working with strength coaches and physical therapists to create these prehab programs in which next year we're going to implement them into all of the teams and say, here's what you can do for your warm-ups and your cool-downs and into your routines to build strength and mobility and flexibility so that we can create stable and healthier athletes for longer. But beyond just that and all of that work that I'm doing now here at my local community to change things, I've also had this idea that's been kind of an idea that's been in the works for about a year and a half now, of an app that would kind of take all of this and funnel it down into one tool. And this one tool is something that the athletes can use to, one, take into their own hands their own health, and they can start to do things for themselves. But then two, that can connect them with healthcare professionals and connect them with their coaches to monitor their teams and how well they're doing. Excuse me. And so that is something that I am building an LLC around, and I'm building a company around it. And through my engineering capstone class this year, I've been able to work on building my portfolio. So this app is actually in the development stage. And so all I'm looking for now is somebody to help me code it and develop it fully. But this business model is all there. And this is something that is a long-term goal for me. This is something that I'm going to continue to create for my career, and as being a surgeon and a businesswoman, because my goal is to be an orthopedic surgeon. But to be both combined is something that I think I'll be able to take this advocacy work to the next level and be able to fully develop this app so that my vision of every athlete on every team everywhere, not just in this nation but globally, can have access to this tool so that they can become healthier and happier long term, and we can limit some of these long-term issues and deterioration on the body. So this is something that is not just a here and now, but this is a long-term, this is a career goal, and this is something that I believe has the power to potentially change people's lives and athletic culture as a whole. And so I'm very excited about everything that has happened, and I'm so excited to see where this project will take me. Thank you.